Hello and welcome to information on how to utilize the new Dayton MMRS Salt Triage materials. I'm David Gerstner, the MMRS Program Manager with Dayton Fire Department. By the end of this presentation, you should be able to quickly and effectively use the salt materials, including all three types of triage tags, the triage ribbon kits, and the worksheet and log for the transport group or transport officer. This presentation covers use of the materials. If you need refreshment on how to utilize salt triage itself, please refer to the Greater Miami Valley EMS Council standing orders, as well as the videos and PowerPoints that are available at both Greater Miami Valley EMS Council website, GMVEMSC.org, and the Dayton MMRS website at DaytonMMRS.org. We'll begin with talking about the inventory, just exactly what you received in terms of materials for using salt. The Greater Miami Valley EMS Council adopted salt triage after a recommendation from the Dayton MMRS Triage Committee and subsequent approval by the EMS Region 2 Regional Physicians Advisory Board. Dayton MMRS agreed to provide triage materials using our grant funds, and those materials have now been distributed to county EMAs for further distribution to you and EMS agencies throughout the region. You should have received two types of triage materials. The first is triage ribbon kits, and the second is the transport group materials, which came in a clipboard, including the triage tags themselves. The triage kit is depicted here. It includes the 6 colors of ribbons. It also comes with a pair of scissors, a flashlight, a grease pencil, the salt triage flow chart for a quick reference guide in the midst of an incident, and a card that each agency can use to mark that agency and the apparatus it's assigned to, for example, Dayton Ladder 11. The transport group clipboard comes with several pieces of information. It includes a shrink-wrapped pack of the live triage tags, and I'll explain that designation in a couple of minutes. In addition to the triage tags, inside the clipboard there's a shrink-wrapped pack of 10 transport officer worksheets, a shrink-wrapped pack of 10 transport officer logs, a grease pencil, a pen, and a carabiner, and we'll discuss in just a few minutes how that carabiner might be used on an incident scene. Finally, there's an instruction sheet that's a synopsis of the information that we'll cover in this presentation. Several of these materials are available for you to download electronically at DaytonMMRS.org, including both the transport worksheets and transport logs and the instructional sheet, as well as videos and a PowerPoint. You can use this same PowerPoint if you prefer to present it yourself. There are also images of all three types of triage tags. Here are the triage tags we've been talking about. As you can see, they're essentially identical except for the color and some watermarks and a couple of other minor details. They are the same on both the front and the back of the triage tags. However, there are some differences, and we'll explain those shortly. The first of the three versions of the triage tags are the live tags. These are relatively expensive tags. They're in white, and they're made on a synthetic paper that's both very difficult to tear and that can be used in inclement conditions. So if it's raining outside, you'll still be able to write on the triage tags. The live tags also include barcodes, numbers, and RFID tags. It's important to note, though, that the hospitals can use either the barcode or the RFID tag, but the RFID numbers do not match the viewable tag number. So when you look at the tag, there's a number that a human can read. That number is the same as the barcode, but it is not the same as the number in the RFID. White triage tags, because they're expensive and because we have a limited quantity of them, are only for real-world use. So you would use the white triage tags that came in your clipboard during any actual MCI that you respond to. The second version of the triage tags is the training tag. These are printed on a blue background, and they have a watermark that says "for training use only." They're on cardstock rather than the synthetic paper. They do not have any of the barcodes or numbers or RFID tags, and for that reason, they're much less expensive. They're intended for you to use at your department in any exercises, trainings, or drills. Your department might choose to do Triage Tuesdays, for example, where you actually attach triage cards to every patient on one Tuesday a month. These were very inexpensive, and we purchased 80,000 of them, and we've distributed a number of those to EMAs around the region. You can get additional training triage tags from Dayton MMRS or from your county EMA. The last version of the triage tag is the exercise tag. It's on orange. It's also printed on cardstock, similar to the training tag. It has a watermark that says "for exercise use only." But the exercise tags do have barcodes, numbers, and RFID tags. So for that reason, they're a little more expensive than the training tags, and they can be used for real exercises where you're actually transporting simulated patients to hospitals. You can obtain exercise tags from Dayton MMRS. As I said, each EMA has a supply of the training triage tags. They also have extra ribbon rolls. Please don't use the live triage tags for training or exercises. We can get you all of the training tags that you need. Now that you're familiar with the materials that you have, let's talk about how to actually go about using them. And we'll start with the triage ribbon kit, because that's where, of course, you would start in an actual mass casualty incident. Again, this is a picture of the triage ribbon kit, and you can see there's a SALT diagram on top of the kit that faces the person who's wearing it. You can wear this either as a bandolier style, as shown here, or you can wear it just belted around your waist. It comes pre-installed with the ribbons and the other items that we mentioned before. It's important to remember that triage ribbons actually have two purposes with our new equipment. First of all, the triage ribbon is the principal indication of the patient's triage category. And of course, you'll start out when you perform triage putting on a triage ribbon to indicate what the patient's category is. You won't put on a triage tag until later. Typically, triage tags are applied one of two places, either in the treatment area or at the transport group. The triage ribbon is also used, though, to attach the triage tag. Our new triage tags do not have any kind of string to attach them to the patient, so you want to leave a fairly long tail on each patient's ribbon, and we find about 16 to 18 inches is about the right length for a triage ribbon. You'd attach these, if possible, on the patient's right wrist. We did this because we want you to be able to easily upgrade or downgrade the patient's triage category. So you use the ribbon to first establish the patient's triage category, then you use the same ribbon to tie on the triage tag. If the patient's triage category changes, you change the ribbon, but you keep the same tag. So just if the patient goes from a red to a yellow, you put on a yellow ribbon and take off the red ribbon, but again, change the ribbon, keep the same tag. The triage ribbon kits do have storage for additional materials. There are 2 storage compartments and a glove pocket. Now, there is room for life-saving interventions. There's room for up to 4 cat tourniquets, 4 chest decompression needles, 4 combat dressings, 4 nasopharyngeal airways, and gloves. But none of those LSIs are supplied by Dayton MMRS. However, should your agency choose to do so, then you're prepared in a mass casualty incident to provide all of the life-saving interventions that you learned about when you took SALT triage training. To recap, you're going to use the triage ribbons to first assign the patient a category. You'll use the same ribbon to apply the triage tag once the patient goes from the triage area to either the treatment area or direct to the transport area for immediate removal. Probably those will be the red patients. And then if the patient's category changes, you simply change the triage ribbon, keeping the same triage tag. Of course, the ribbons match the colors of SALT, the ID med categories of red for immediate, yellow for delayed, green for minimal, gray for expectant, and then the ribbon for dead, rather than being a black ribbon, is actually a zebra-striped ribbon, so that it's easier for you to see in night conditions. There's also a 6th ribbon, and that 6th ribbon is orange to indicate that a patient's been contaminated with some hazardous materials, but we wanted to make sure, again, at low light conditions, that you can distinguish this from red, so the orange ribbons have black polka dots on them. Contaminated patients, therefore, will initially get 2 ribbons. They'll get an orange ribbon and their triage category color ribbon, whether that be red, yellow, green, gray, etc. Once the patient has been deconned, you'll remove the orange ribbon, but still mark on the triage tag that the patient was contaminated and has been decontaminated. And we'll show you that shortly. And that brings us to use of the triage tags. This is the triage tag, and since this is training, we'll be using the blue tag to demonstrate this. And the triage tags come with 3 sections that are divided by perforations that easily come apart. As you can see here, we have a top main section and then 2 tabs that easily tear off, and we'll go through these one at a time, both front and back. This is the front main section, or side 1 of the main section of the triage tag. At the top, there's the barcode and the human readable number, as well as a space for you to write in the patient's name if it's known, any allergies if you are aware of that, the patient's sex and age. Below that on the main section is the injury key, and this is used simply by indicating a number on the body diagram and then writing in the injury key what the problem is that equates to that number. So for example, if the patient had burns on their abdomen, you'd write a 1 on the abdomen of the body diagram and then type in, or write in rather, burns on the injury key. You can also use the injury key to indicate conditions such as shortness of breath. Below that's the dirty and decontaminated area that we mentioned earlier, and it's orange with polka dots to match the orange ribbons. And a patient should actually have, by the time they get a triage tag applied, probably would get both of these checked. You want to indicate they're dirty so that the hospital is aware that they've been contaminated with some type of hazardous material, but you'd also check decontaminated to indicate that you have completed field decon on the patient. Below that, this weird looking thing is the radio frequency identification, or the RFID tag. Of course, there is no RFID tag on the training tags, but we show it here so you're aware of the location. There's also a QR code here, and that's just something that you can snap with a smartphone, and it simply takes you to DaytonMMRS.org, where you can see pictures of these materials, you can get the instruction sheet, get the video, or any other information about all this that you need. Finally, the bottom of the main section of the triage tag is space for patient vital signs, and you can indicate the time, pulse, blood pressure, respirations, their level of consciousness, and there's also a location for you to indicate the patient's triage category, and you just draw a line through the appropriate color. Now remember, we've said before, the primary indication of the triage category is not indicated by anything that's on the card itself, it's indicated by the ribbon, but by checking these, it gives you a way to see how the patient's condition has changed over time if you've kept them in a treatment area before transport. That takes us to side 2 of the main section. At the top of side 2, you have space to indicate times and amounts and types of IV fluids and whether they were administered intravenously or through an IO. Below that are a series of treatments, and our expectation is that you'll use the check boxes and simply write in times. However, there is space there that you can indicate other treatments if there's something that you used in the midst of the mass casualty incident that's not already printed on the triage tag. But we wanted to make it as quick and easy for you as possible to simply check a box and write in a time to indicate you used any of these. There's also space for a narrative, should that be needed, and if you have time to write a narrative on the patient. And below that, there's a space for the location the patient was found. Now, that may not be necessary in every incident. If it's a collision involving a bus and everyone was found on the bus, no one expects you to write down the seat number of the bus. However, if some of those patients were ejected from the bus, or in a number of other scenarios, it may be very useful to have that information, so we wanted to provide a designated space for you to indicate that. Below that is the first tab, and the first tab doesn't have anything that you write on. There's no space for name or anything else. It simply has a barcode, and the barcode and the human readable number on this tab match the barcode and the number on the main triage tag. You use this code either for bags of evidence or bags of personal effects. For example, if it was a hazmat incident, you may have removed the patient's clothing and put them in a bag. You can clip this tag onto it and then later match it up to the patient by matching the barcode to the triage tag number. The other tag is something to make the transport officer's job a little bit easier. It has demographic information about the patient, name, age, date of birth, and so forth, and it has a space to write down what hospital the patient went to, as well as what unit transported them and what time, and on the opposite side, a space that you just draw a quick line through to indicate what the triage category was at the time of transport. Now, this patient's category may have changed multiple times while you were caring for them, but this is the category at the time they're actually removed from the scene. And these have a small hole through them, and as I mentioned before, we provided carabiners in the clipboards. And the purpose of the carabiners is that you can simply clip one of the carabiners onto your belt and then clip these tags onto the carabiner. So it gives the transport officer a way to hold a number of these, and then as time becomes available can transfer this information to the transport log that we'll show you next. So that brings us to the transport log. The transport log, along with other information, other items such as the transport worksheets and the triage tags, came in the clipboards that were delivered to you. The transport log and the transportation worksheet are provided in shrink wrap packs of 10. They're on a card stock that makes it fairly easy to handle in bad weather conditions, although it's not the synthetic paper. And we'll talk about how to use each section of both of these sheets. The transport log really is simply a place that you can use to keep track of where each patient went. And of course that does become very important after a mass casualty incident. People always need to know where the different victims went. So let's talk about the different sections of the transport log first. At the top, there's a space to write in your agency's name. There's a key for the SALT triage categories and room to write the date and the incident location. Below that is what the bulk of the sheet is, space to write information about each patient. And there's a space for each triage tag number, the patient's name, or if you don't have the name, a quick description, their sex as male or female, what their tag color was, or if you have time, even their general condition, whether or not decon was necessary, what their destination was. Most of the time this will be a hospital, but in some incidents it may involve other transport locations. Which unit transported them, for instance, Dayton Medic 11, and the time that they were transported. Below that is the start of a key for hospital abbreviations. So you can just look down and get the abbreviation so you don't have to write full hospital names, but we wanted to provide a list of abbreviations so that you're using the same thing consistently through the incident. Now they aren't all on the front of this form, but the form is printed so that when you're holding it on a clipboard, it flips up to let you see the back side of the form. And on the back side of the form is a continuation of this hospital key. In addition to all of the hospitals in our region, we've provided a key here for use of out-of-region trauma centers. If it's a really large incident, and we've talked over and over about the importance of hospital distribution in our SALT training, if it's a very large incident, you may wind up transporting to trauma centers outside the area. So we've provided abbreviations for those as well. In recognition of how important the transport group is, we've provided some of the most important tasks that the transport group has to perform during a mass casualty incident. So this is something that you can refer to during the incident and make sure that everything necessary is getting done. That brings us to the transport worksheet, where the transport log is just that, a log of where different patients went. The transport worksheet is intended to help you keep track of how well you're distributing or allocating patients during the mass casualty incident. Again, we want to emphasize the importance of not overloading hospitals, so we wanted to give you a very easy way to track what the condition is of the hospitals that you're using during your MCI. On the back of the transport worksheet is a user guide that discusses some of the important points that need to be taken care of, as well as exactly how to go about using this guide. The top on side 1 of the transport officer's worksheet is a reminder to use the regional hospital notification system if you're dealing with a mass casualty incident, and it tells you the number to call, that you should ask for the dispatch supervisor and the information that you need to provide. And of course you can add additional information if you have it, but some of the key points that you'd want to provide so that the hospitals receive the right information. Below that we have a list of hospitals. And with each hospital we have a series of boxes to the right. The first is how much they're able to receive. And you would want to contact the hospitals and find out what they're able to take. And on their first call, you find out how many greens, yellows, reds, and grays that they can handle. You'd write that in the top half of the box that's separated by a diagonal slash. And the reason it's separated by a slash is that if it's a significantly sized incident, we'd like you to check again about halfway through the incident and see what their conditions are. Remembering that they're getting patients not just from you, but also they're continuing to receive patients that aren't connected with the mass casualty incident, and they may well receive patients that self-transported. So halfway through the incident you can recontact them and write in the bottom half of this box under the slash how many they're able to receive at that point in time. Then as you go through the incident, you keep track of how many you sent, and this is just very quick and easy. You simply use a hash mark or a tally mark, just a slash for each patient within the category, the green, the yellow, the red, or the gray, that went to that hospital. On the back, again, we wanted to emphasize that you may use out-of-area hospitals, and we provided space for the out-of-area trauma centers that are near our region, as well as a list of other out-of-region hospitals that you might use, and there are spaces that you can write in any of these that you utilize during your incident. Again, the transport officer's worksheet is just to help you make sure you're allocating patients appropriately and distributing them to different hospitals. It's just a quick glance that lets you see who's got space and can handle more patients and which hospitals are starting to get overloaded. Finally, we want to mention additional training, and of course, whether you're using triage ribbons or tourniquets or anything else in EMS, the more you train with it, the more proficient you are. One of the things that we've found that's very effective is just using stuffed animal drills, and we've done several of these to test out these materials, and we brought in EMS providers from around the region. We simply assigned conditions to each stuffed animal and then had the EMS providers attach triage ribbons, take them to either the transport area or the treatment area, attach the triage tag, fill out that tag, make use of the transport log and the transport worksheet so that people actually get an opportunity to go through all of these processes. This is a very quick, inexpensive, short duration exercise that you can conduct in your station with no problems whatsoever, and we'd encourage you to do this. As you do this, of course, you'd use the blue triage training tags, but go ahead and use the real ribbons. If after your exercise you find that your ribbons are getting low, and that'll take a while because there's 300 feet on each ribbon roll, but when you're starting to get low, you can get additional ribbons from any one of three places. As I mentioned, we have some at the county EMAs. Dayton MMRS has more that you can get, but you can also buy additional triage ribbons or triage ribbon kits if you need them from our vendor that was Disaster Response Solutions down by Cincinnati. They're in Loveland, Milford area, and their website's shown here. Finally, there's more information on both SALT and all of these triage materials at both of the websites we mentioned before, DaytonMMRS.org and GreaterMiamiValleyEMSCouncil.org. Thanks very much for listening and participating in this training. If you have questions, please use the frequently asked questions on the DaytonMMRS.org and send those to us, and we'll try to put that information out to everybody who needs it. Thanks again for listening.